Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome back to Shocker Strong Resilience. This is Module 6, and this week we are going to talk about practicing acts of kindness and generosity as a form of building resilience and contributing to happiness, which has kind of been a recurring thing we've talked about every week. So when we talk about practicing acts of kindness and generosity, we are talking about selfless acts, altruism, right? Something that we don't get anything out of. So one of the assignments you guys have for this week is to, I think it's number 2, and there's 5 things that you are supposed to do, nice, generous things you're supposed to do for random people throughout the week. And the last one is do something kind or generous for someone and don't tell anyone about it. And I thought that was really great for them to include that, because even if we don't get anything tangible in return, like somebody owing us a favor or money or food or whatever, by telling others, we do get kudos for that. We get some validation that we did a good thing out of that. And so I thought that was a really great exercise for them to include. And I am very excited to read your responses for this week's worksheets, especially for that one, and see how that experience goes for everyone. I don't think I have to define kindness or generosity for you guys. Obviously, at this point, you probably know. So just to kind of dive into the research behind some of this, is that research shows we feel happier and more fulfilled, not when other people are doing things for us, but when we're doing things for others. And some of that is just that doing good things makes you feel good. And the other half of that is that when people do things for us, because our society is very transactional, you do for me, I do for you, that it brings with it a worry. So someone might do you a favor and that totally helps you out, but it brings with it some anxiety of, do I owe them a favor now? Are they expecting something in return? And like, when do they want that? Can I fulfill on that? Am I going to have to help them move? Things like that. And so even though the favor may help us, it also gives us some hindrance in terms of anxiety or mental fatigue, worrying about that, or just feeling indebted. Or we talked about this the very first week when we talked about friendships, the give and take of relationships. And for some of us, asking for a favor, even if we never ask for favors, makes us feel like we are always the takers in a relationship, when maybe that's not accurate, but that's how it feels to us. So that gets uncomfortable. So in practicing those acts of kindness and generosity towards others, a lot of times this comes from people, for strangers, as volunteer work. And for those of us who are professional helpers, like myself, we are awful at volunteering our time, specifically our time, because it's what we do 40 plus hours a week for our job. And we're kind of exhausted from it, to be honest. And that's a very real thing that professional helping professions, jobs, whatever, help with or cope with, is that we don't have enough left to give on our off time. We may donate in terms of goods like food drives, clothes, money to charities, whatever. We might do that, but we don't contribute our time very well. For other people who don't do that, volunteering is a great way for them to fill their cup while filling other people's cups. And we do mean the metaphorical cup that everyone has inside themselves, that when positive things happen to us or around us, it fills our cup and makes us feel good. And when people are mean to us or things go wrong, it empties our cup and we feel drained and we feel crappy, and we might treat other people that way too. So volunteering is a great win-win. And it doesn't have to be like twice a week, every week, I'm there and I do this. And if you have the time to do something like that, that is awesome. If you don't beat yourself up about it. Doing things that are kind and generous is awesome, regardless of how much you are or how often you're able to do it. The world needs helpers and volunteers and people who care and are giving of themselves to their community. And that's what matters. We all have different limitations, whether it's our work schedules, whether we have children and their schedules to work around, whatever the case, it's okay. Whatever you can do is enough. And maybe it's around the holidays because you're on break from school and you know that's a tough time for a lot of people, and it's probably going to be worse this year around that time because financial concerns are even heavier, and we're going to have flu season on top of pandemic, and a lot of places are going to be asking for extra help from their communities and from their volunteers. So if you've never volunteered before in your life, this is a great time to start. And if you don't know where to start, you can visit the student involvement page, WSU's Office of Student Involvement, and we have a community service group. And that is what they do, is different community service projects. And we have an entire database of volunteering opportunities that you can search from too. So we can get you started in your volunteering journey if you want. You can try a bunch of different things. Some people like helping the elderly. Some people like helping kids. Some people don't care as long as they don't have to be outside. There's plenty of work and help to go around for everyone. Yes, Community Services Board, CSB. Thank you, Em. I appreciate you putting that up there. So if you're not sure, just hunt around and find something and see what fills your cup and fills other people's cups. See where the need is and try to fill that need. A book that I wanted to recommend this week is this. It's called Channel Kindness, and it's by Lady Gaga. And this book is actually a lot thicker than it looks when you look at it online. I thought it was about maybe a quarter the size, but it is filled with stories of kindness and community. And fair trigger warning, which is actually printed in the inside of the book, there are mentions and stories told that relate to sensitive topics like sexual assault or suicidal ideation. So be mindful of that when you pick up the book. You can actually read samples of it if you look it up on Amazon. And I think you can read through the table of contents, her foreword, and maybe like the very first story in there. And just get a feel for it before you spend the $14.99 on it. And I think that this is a really nice, even approach to kindness and to showing people the way to be kind or to be generous or to help their communities when it's something that seems so simple and you're like, well, I know how to be kind, you just be nice to people, right? And you just don't be a jerk. But it's different to be intentionally kind. And I mean, not the common courtesy manners that we all grew up with in passing, but to be intentionally and mindfully kind and generous to others and make it meaningful and putting effort behind it. It's the difference between sending a thank you card to someone that was out of a generic pack of 10 and picking out a Hallmark thank you card that is very specific to that person's taste and personality. That's the difference. So this is a nice guide of what it looks like, how it can affect the people that you help, and how that has the pay it forward effect. So a story that I like to share about this is when, It was about 12 years ago. And I had a full-time job. I was a very responsible mid-20s young adult. And then I lost that job. And at the same time, I had a part-time gig in a coffee shop. And it was fun. It was extra money. I like coffee. And I still had that at least. So I had some income, but losing a job really sucks. And I was relying on my parents to help pay my rent. And it was really stressful while I was looking for other jobs. And one of the things, if you've ever worked in the service industry, be it retail or fast food or whatever, is that you have regular customers that you get to know, and you yourself may be a regular somewhere. And I had a regular, and her name was Angelica, which ends up being very fitting because on the day after I lost said job and I was making her espresso drink, and when she's waiting on it, I'm supposed to talk to her, and I really like Angelica. She's a great person, so I was going to talk to her anyway. And we're chatting. She asks how I'm doing because she noticed I'm not myself, and I tell her what's going on, and she empathized and said she hoped things, got better for me. And when I handed her her drink, she handed me a folded up bill. And all of our tips are supposed to go in the tip jar. We're not supposed to, take them individually. It's tip share. And she said, "This is just for you." And I said, "Thank you." I thought it was very sweet. I put it on my apron, and I didn't look at it or pay attention to it until I had a break a couple hours later. And she gave me a $50 bill. And it had a little note folded in it that said things will get better. And that has stuck with me. That was kindness. I barely knew this woman just from serving her coffee a couple times a week for a couple of months. And she saw an opportunity to do something kind, unnecessarily kind, for someone she barely knew. And it meant the world to me because at that time, $50 was almost a full month of groceries. It was a month of gas. It was life-saving for at least 2 to 3 weeks for me. And I will never forget her or her face or what she looked like. And she was a fabulous person. And I would just be thrilled if I crossed paths with her again today. That's the impact it made on me. And it tends to be just those simple little acts of kindness that stick with people. Grand, big gestures are great, and people obviously remember those too. But not everything needs to be that huge level, like the people who split a winning lottery ticket because they didn't have a tip for their server at a restaurant. That's awesome, and it's huge, but that doesn't mean those little everyday things don't matter or they're not just as important. The little things are even more important. And if you can find a way to pay it forward, if you've experienced some kindness like that, make it a priority to do so. Mine was that about a year later, I was fully employed again. I was back on my feet. Things were great. And I was in a financial position to help a close friend and coworker of mine who needed, not just wanted, but needed to buy a new car. But because of her credit history, which she was recovering from a setback, she wasn't going to be able to afford the payments because they were astronomical with the interest rate she was going to have to pay. So I co-signed with her on the loan, knowing that if she defaulted or anything, it could negatively affect my credit for a while. But I knew her, I trusted her. She was a responsible adult. I called her my work mom. Like, I was not worried about it. And without hesitation, I was like, "I'm going with you to CarMax. I'm going to co-sign on the loan for you." That was my paying it forward because Angelica came to my mind. And if you have that moment and you haven't paid it forward yet, it's never too late. And if you want to create that moment for someone else to pay it forward, if you see the opportunity, take it and do it. I have a guest speaker today, and I am going to have M switch us over to him for a moment. His name is Matt, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and let him take it from here with his portion.
Hello, my name's Matt, obviously. You see it on the screen. I do a lot of volunteering with the veteran community specifically. I lived in Washington State for, I don't know, some odd 8 years. And throughout those 8 years, 6 of them were spent helping homeless veterans and student veterans get back on the right path financially, academically, et cetera, et cetera. I work specifically with a student veteran organization called the SVA, which is the Student Veteran Association, which wasn't too far off. But they didn't have a national chapter, so myself and another individual set it up. And when it came to the responsibilities of what we had to do during our time setting this chapter up, there was volunteer opportunities when I was still a student. So at first I was kind of hesitant because, I mean, I'm a student veteran for one. I served in the military for 5 years and I got out and I was in an incredibly dark place, but I wanted to better myself. So I kind of was just going through the motions of school. And it wasn't until I was able to get set up into this volunteer opportunity that I actually recognized that it was making me feel a lot better about being done with the military service. Because when I was in the military, it felt like the most selfless thing I was able to do. And you're given all this praise and you're given all these great things while you're in, but as soon as you get out, they're just like, oh, that's great, you served in the military. So it's like you have this feeling of that a lot of veterans suffer with, that they're inadequate now. And when I was able to start setting up these volunteer opportunities and helping other veterans, I started to see that like the things I was doing was giving these people a spark of hope. And at first, I mean, I'm not gonna, BS you and say that at first I wasn't doing it kind of selfishly, because I felt it made me feel way better about myself and like my current situation. But it also introduced me to like looking forward to being able to help someone as opposed to getting something out of it. And for the course of the next 4 years after we had set up the chapter, we started to volunteer with different veteran organizations specifically because, I mean, it was my community and that's what I knew. And the happiness that these people had just from small things like buying socks for homeless people, or we were part of something called hashtag lunch bag. It's where we would fill like 400 to 500 bagged lunches and go hand them out to people who suffered from food insecurities, or they were homeless, or they just couldn't afford lunch. Like being able to step out of your comfort zone for a moment for someone else, especially in this trying time during a pandemic, that does wonders for your personal psyche. And I know it sounds like I'm speaking as if, the only thing that I got out of it was like self-validation and satisfaction, but there is no feeling that I mean, it's indescribable what happens when you know that you have affected somebody's life in a way and what you're capable of as a human giver. And, Tara was talking about how professional helpers are exhausted. And I mean, being a volunteer, and if you're volunteering a lot, it is also exhausting, but we continue to do these things because we know it is going to positively impact whoever it is that we're helping. So, um, I guess like my big story is it was my first volunteer opportunity, and we were given a chance to kind of look. There's a laundry list of things that the veteran organization we were using or were working with at the time, they're like, well, we could do all these things. Well, we chose that it would probably be the best idea to start small. So what we did is we provided a forum for the student veterans at our school to speak to the Board of Education about things that they saw that could be improved. And nobody thought, the college we were working with, they thought it wouldn't get that far. Like we weren't going to be able to speak to the board because that's kind of a big deal. And we developed an avenue in which the student veteran population could be represented and be able to talk directly to the board, just because we kept asking questions and we were really dedicated to the idea that, some things need to happen in order for veteran engagement and student veterans to not feel so lost in their first year of school, because it's like the most hazardous time for them. And, there's a lot of dropouts. There's, they could be suffering from different things. And it's a very stressful thing to transition out of the military back into the civilian world. And so we were there as kind of like peer counselors to kind of guide them. We weren't paid. This is just things like if they needed somebody in the middle of the night, they could call you. If they needed help, excuse me, if they needed help with, say, we had one guy who needed handicap accessibility into his house. So actually Lowe's donated all the materials needed, and the contractors came out and built him a ramp, and we went out there to help him with that. Like it's a different, it's kind of a different path when you're running it through a chapter, but when you're able to individually go and volunteer and just start seeing other opportunities after you've been introduced to them. Like I used to volunteer for a soup kitchen where I lived at the time, which was right outside of Seattle. And I mean, these guys and like gals, they were just eternally grateful that you were there and that you were willing to help them. We did one soup kitchen where we were also for Christmas, where we were handing out blankets, jackets, like hygiene products, female, excuse me. We called them feminization kits, but I don't know, like feminine products and stuff like that. I guess I'm not savvy on that stuff because I don't use it. So apologies for my ignorance, but we were handing out these different kits for these people, and they were just so grateful. And that feeling sparked something in me that like is really driving me to continue to do it for the rest of my life. That's just something that I'm going to keep doing, because, there are people who need help out there. And if you're one of those people that need help, I just want you to know that there are people out there that want to help you, and it's not a burden. To me, it's a beautiful thing, because you're developing a relationship and good rapport with people who absolutely deserve it. It's worth it. It's worth it to ask for help, because I did. And in that dark time, something came to me that just completely blew my mind. I didn't think it was going to help me in my own like journey into self-healing from my trauma, but it did. And, I extend the same to you. So it is definitely a beautiful thing. So I'm going to have Tara come back on, if that's cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm still here. I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. So
Starbucks is too far away. Thank you so much. So your tasks, your assignments this week that you're supposed to do and report back on is really think about the opportunities you have to show kindness and generosity to others. And it can be time, it can be a donation of items, it can be a donation of money. But I will tell you that the donation of time and face-to-face meeting with the people you're helping is by far and away, like Matt said, the best feeling that you can't get from writing a check, or in this day and age, sending a PayPal or a Venmo. When you contribute items, you might be able to see those going out. If it's to a food bank, or some places take gently used furniture for those who have to start over in rapid rehousing. I know Catholic Charities does that for homeless veterans and for families that are starting over after leaving a domestic violence situation. And there's different organizations here in town. His Helping Hands is another one that provide goods and things like that too. And when you're donating those, you may be able to catch a glimpse of somebody receiving their donation too. And that's great. That's a great feeling too. But the interaction and those relationships that you build and that human connection that you get from sharing a moment of kindness and generosity, that's what builds the resilience the most, your personal resilience. Because when you help someone else get through a tough time, you connect it to your tough times. And if you can help someone else get through theirs, you can get through yours, right? Even if they aren't the same type of tough times, even if the situations are completely different or of completely different scales or magnitudes, if you can help someone else get through theirs, you know you've got at least some of the skills and strength to get through your own. So you can visit, again, student involvement's page or the community service board page to look for those opportunities here in our community. If you already do something somewhere, great. I know that for people who are members of a faith community, that there's always opportunities there. And sometimes it's just a matter of asking or hunting down somebody to get you the information if it's not readily available, like on a website or something. And I know that a lot of things like that are looking very different right now because of COVID, but the need is greater now more than ever. So when I say us professional helpers don't volunteer our time a whole lot because we are exhausted from our giving of our time in ourselves and our jobs, it's not that we don't see the value in it, obviously, or that we don't want to continue to help, but you have to have boundaries. Healthy boundaries are everything. And you can help so much it hurts. And I mean that in a very literal sense. You can help to the point that you exhaust yourself and then you are useless to everyone, including yourself. Or you can overhelp to the point that the person or community that you're helping is, you're doing them a disservice because you're not giving them an opportunity to learn and build their own skills. And everything's balance, right? So start small, I guess is what I'm saying. If you've never done this before, or if it's been a while, and start small, start with something you're comfortable with or familiar with, and go from there. Be sure that when you're giving of yourself that you are keeping good boundaries in check and you're not giving more of yourself than you have to give. And take note of not just how it makes you feel to be doing that action, but how it makes you feel to watch and to see others in receipt of that. Not everybody is overwhelmingly grateful for volunteered help. Most people are, like 99% of people are. There's a certain small subset of people who are not. We still treat them with kindness. We still provide our generosity. whatever causes them to have a negative reaction to receiving help, I mean, that's their demon that they're wrestling with. That's not ours to judge. We're there to help. We're going to help, right? So Matt had said that when he started his volunteering journey, that there was some selfishness in it to feel better about himself. And it starts that way for a lot of people. I became a social worker because I recognized very early on the privilege I had as a young white woman growing up in suburban Wichita, and the opportunities I was afforded and things I did not have to struggle with that other people did. And the inherent unfairness of that, just the chance of who and where you're born and into what circumstances, it bothered me. And I mean, at an age as young as like 15, 16, I was not okay with that. And I wanted to do whatever it was I could do to help people who did not have that same, I'm going to call it luck, but that same privilege of being born into opportunities. And that was what started my journey. That's not what drives my career now or has ever. That even changed as soon as I got into college and started my professional path of study. That was fueled by trying to identify where I could best help with my skills and what my interests were, and then making it happen and making a career out of it, because not only did it fill my cup or my internal bucket, but it also, I can't explain the feeling that comes along with knowing that you're affecting real change in somebody's life, even if it's just a one-time thing. Maybe just because you explained, you helped someone understand how a system or a process worked, and you never see them again, but it helped them apply for Medicaid or some other benefit that they really needed. That was my path in getting into being a professional helper, because that feeling that comes from it is just absolutely invaluable. And it is a ripple effect when we help others. So I know for every, here at students, but before this, it was families and teenagers. Every little bit of help that I could give along the way, it changed something for the better somewhere. Maybe that family or client or kid didn't complete services with me successfully on paper, but somewhere, something along the way made a positive change, because we had a real conversation with parents about where they were struggling or why they were acting out in school. That was able to finally get addressed, and they would actually finally do better in school. And maybe it was just by a little bit, but they weren't failing anymore and they weren't truant anymore. They were actually going. Little changes are fine, just like the little things that we do to help. If the effect from them is little, that's okay too. Those small things build on each other. Nothing happens overnight in terms of change with human beings. So if you start helping and volunteering and you don't get to actually see the results of your kindness and generosity that you're giving of yourself, don't get disheartened. Those professional helpers, we can tell you, we signed on knowing that we were likely never going to see the good outcomes of any of our work, because it was going to happen years and decades down the road, long after that client's forgotten our names. And that's okay, because the fact that it happens is the important thing. So don't get disheartened if you can't see the fruits of your labor immediately, because it's not about that. It's not about you witnessing it if it takes longer. It's about the fact that you put that change into effect by doing something nice for someone. And I know I'm making it sound like doing some small gesture of kindness or generosity could be like life shattering and altering for someone later on down the road. And it could be, it could not be. We never know, but it doesn't cost you anything to be kind. It costs you nothing to treat your fellow human beings with dignity and respect and care, because everybody's fighting their own battles and has their own struggles, and we don't know the half of it, even if we're really close to that person sometimes. So especially with strangers, we have no idea. And showing them a small kindness every time you come into contact with them could make a difference. It might be slow, it might be so small you can't see it, but that's not the point. You're seeing it's not the point. You're doing it and how it resonates with the person who's receiving it is the point. And for this week, for your assignments, when you're posting, it's, you know, it's pass fail, right? Or it's credit, no credit for those to count as one of your 8 modules to complete, right? But these activities and your assignments this week in the worksheets are very personal and they're very introspective. So yes, no short answers are not going to work this week. This is the work that we do as human beings to grow, which we talked about last week, right? And growth takes time, it takes effort, and it takes discomfort because you've never been here before. That's why it's called growth. So when you're doing those assignments and looking to submit them, they need to be meaningful. They need to be robust, I guess is the word I'm kind of sort of looking for. And they need to be thoughtful responses. If anyone has any questions or concerns about anything we discussed today, please feel free to message me or email me, either, you know, via Blackboard or just straight up from your WSU Chakras account. If you know someone who's having a hard time and could use a professional helper, or maybe you've been providing informal help and support, but you're concerned that it's not enough, you can always go to wichita.edu/care and submit a care concern, because that is what we are here for. You know, this live stream is an hour of my week. There's other prep and things that go into it, but the bulk of my week, my work week, is spent talking with students directly and helping them problem solve, because they need help, they need support. And sometimes it's small and sometimes it's big, and it doesn't matter. Some students I talked to once and we saw their thing and we are good. And some students hang out for months with me because things just keep happening, because that's life, and everything in between. So if you got a friend or a classmate or someone you're concerned about who might need some kindness and generosity in their life, especially during this difficult time, submit a care report. We'll take it from there. Reaching out to offer help never hurts. And your friend doesn't want help or an assist, or really doesn't need it, and you just don't know the full extent of things, no harm, no foul. Doesn't hurt our feelings. That's awesome. We're great when other people are great. And if they're not, we're great to help them get there. So as we start to go into the last half of the semester and the stress that's going to come with not having the typical break that we have in October for fall break, and then going home at Thanksgiving and then being gone until February, and having remote classes for those last few days of the semester, and then all remote for finals. there's a lot of stress that comes along with that because we're still kind of in uncharted territory here. And then you got holidays and, like I said, flu season and just a lot of other things on top of it right now. And everybody needs support or help at some point, and there's no shame in asking for it or accepting it. And we've talked about that too. So nothing is easy for anyone right now. And we could all use little doses of kindness and generosity. And I know we're all wearing masks when we go out in public these days, but you can tell when someone's smiling. You can see it in their eyes, right? So even if you're passing by a stranger in a store, or it's somebody, a cashier or a server or whatever, that you're out in public and you're both wearing masks, you still smile. And, you know, throw in some kind words with it while you're doing it. You can tell the intent is there, and that's what matters, especially right now when everyone's hungry for human connection and struggling with social isolation that's come along with this. If talking to other people or interacting with other people in any of the ways that we've talked about to show kindness or generosity is something that's uncomfortable for you, and I don't just mean in the personal growth style of uncomfortable that we kind of talked about last week, but maybe it triggers some deep anxiety within you, or there's something else that's kind of a barrier to you practicing that, but you really would like to, get a hold of me. There are things you can do that can help connect, that don't involve getting really personal or putting yourself physically out there. Maybe that's just not the safest bet for you right now because of COVID, because you have some pre-existing conditions or you're in a high-risk group or whatever the case. There is a really great app that's free to download, and it's called Vent, V-E-N-T, like, you know, when you're venting to your friend that you're really upset with your other friend for something they did. And it is like this virtual little community of support. And I learned about it. I don't remember where, probably through social media. And I've downloaded it a couple of times. And because I'm a professional helper, and sometimes if it's after hours, I just can't help myself. And I feel like I have to do more. So every once in a while, I re-download it and I log in and I just go through, and people just post like things that they're struggling with or something bad that happened that day. And everyone in this little community is so supportive, and you can offer a digital virtual hug to someone. You can comment, all sorts of things. So my thing that I do, because I can't get into a really deep, meaningful conversation with 8 million strangers via an app, is that I scroll through and read, and if anyone is mentioning having thoughts of suicide or self-harm, and they're struggling with that, and they need help or want help, or they don't know what to do, I post the National Crisis Hotline text line, which is 741-741. And they can text that and talk to somebody. And I'm not saying you have to go out and be one of the people on the end of 741-741, but even offering support to a stranger in a medium such as that is incredibly helpful, and it's anonymous. You don't have to have any awkward social interaction. You know, it's via, you know, it's all written, but you can still offer support in that way. There's a lot of apps and virtual communities out there like that. So if you cannot get out in person in a community, or social interactions are just difficult for you anyway, and then with strangers and trying to accomplish something is just too much of a stressor, which I totally get, find a digital way to do it. There are plenty of ways, and that's just as powerful and just as meaningful, because we all know that social media and the internet can be absolutely horrible places that bring out the worst in humanity. But that doesn't mean we can't use it to do some good too. So I appreciate you guys, just like I do every week, for joining us for these. And again, book Channel Kindness by Lady Gaga. It's fantastic. I do believe you don't have to spend money on it either. I do believe you can pick up a library copy or even just download a sample from Amazon. So I will see you guys again next week, next Thursday, 3:30, and we will hop into Module 7. And it will be up for review for you guys and available on Sunday evening. And we will go from there. So again, don't forget, if you complete 8 out of the 11 modules, you enter those drawings for a $500 book scholarship for next spring, and for one of 3 Shocker swag bags full of free Shocker gear, which who doesn't love free stuff, right? And also, if you are interested in our Self-Care Sunday event this month, which is decompression yoga, because who does not need to decompress after midterms, you can check out the Shocker Strong Self-Care Sunday page. And if you are interested in participating in person or virtually, you can register for that too. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. All right. So thanks again. And I will see you guys next